Hello, this is day 222 of the Gaza War, and I'm going to try something a little different. I have a medical sit rep from Tarek, Dr. Tarek coming, but he's not available yet. So I thought I would do the military one before he gets here because what he's going to talk about is really grim and disheartening, and the military story is more complicated and changing and dynamic. And so rather than occupy his time with this and offer you and make you wait for the military update, I thought I would do that now. And then when he gets here, I'll end up posting probably two videos tonight. So without further ado, I can tell you about the news from the fronts. Zaytun, as you may know from hearing from John Elmer yesterday on the Electronic Intifada live stream, the Israelis actually withdrew from Zaytun, but the battle in Jabalia and in Rafa, they both continue. Just so people understand, Jabalia is in the north. It is one of the first places that was invaded. Rafa is in the very south on the Egyptian border. And apparently, the Americans have also claimed to have dropped anchor and connected their pier somewhere around here. Jabalia, as you can see, is here. Zaytun is right beside it. And Rafa is all the way down here. And there's fighting all here and here. Intense, intense, intense fighting. The number of attacks are too many. I'm probably going to make a summary. I would plan to do that maybe tonight, but I'm not going to get to. So I'll have to do it another night. I'll make a summary of all the attacks. The resistance attacks are many. They're complex. They're using all their weapons. They're destroying bulldozers. They're destroying tanks. They're destroying armored personnel carriers. They're destroying groups of soldiers in buildings. All of these things. Something has just frozen on my computer, which is great. Let me continue. There's both reports from the fronts that I want to give you, but also some kind of strategic thoughts I was working on a Twitter thread this morning, and I want to kind of go over that with you on here on YouTube as well. So there's also a major speech from Ismail Haniyeh, the head of the Politburo of Hamas. But I mean, just to give you a sense of targeting, Qassam is reporting hitting D9 bulldozers. They're reporting um, hitting, like I said, multiple instances of hitting tanks. They're doing uh, a lot of it in Jabalia. I'm just trying to scroll. Uh, yes. The other major deal to report on is Hezbollah on the Lebanese front. So a couple of days ago, Hezbollah downed a major surveillance balloon. And I saw the news of the balloon and Ali Mortada, who many of you probably watch. He's the guy, he's the Lebanese media guy who makes the videos where he says, "Hello, my enemies, may you have a very bad day." And then he proceeds to report something. He talks directly to the Israelis. So, and he's very funny. He has a very dry sense of humor. So he made a post and he said, "Hello, my enemies. We found this balloon. Do you want it back?" And but the balloon apparently is an extremely expensive multi-million dollar balloon that specializes in tracking um, drones. And today, uh, after downing that balloon a couple of days ago, the the Hezbollah sent a drone to do an airstrike. So the drone, rather than a suicide drone, of which they have many, and the Iraqis have been sending them, they sent a drone that fired missiles and then returned. So, and these missiles are, 5 kilo payload, and they're anti-personnel missiles, and they hit a gathering of Israeli soldiers inside Israel. So that's a huge deal. And that's new. It's apparently the first airstrike on Israel since 1973, and the very first airstrike on Israel from Lebanon. Many, 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 many airstrikes on Lebanon have come from Israel, but not the other way around um, until today. So that's I like I said, I can't I I can't there really is too many to list, and it would sound like it would be hard to describe what I would be listing. It would be like sniper operation, uh, D9 bulldozer destroyed or targeted, uh, and on like that. So instead of doing that, um, I will try to give you some kind of quantitative summary. Often, when I plan to make a quantitative summary, uh, the resistance does it themselves. So I wouldn't be surprised if Abu Obeida does some kind of summary at some point where he describes the numbers of attacks, the numbers of different things they targeted, um, and how long or how many in different places. But short of that, uh, I will until then I'll kind of leave that. I'll come back to that. But let me tell you. I'm just gonna find Ismail Haniyeh and his speech. I'm gonna try to find some notes from his speech. It was about a 20-minute speech, and a couple of points without even looking at the notes from when I read them. He said he said he was specifically attacking the idea that Israel or the US was going to decide what happens on the day after. You've probably all heard the what happens in the day after. There's no plan for the day after. And he said the day after is going to be decided by the movement. It's going to be decided by the Palestinian people, and that's that. And that was I would say that was like the most definitive thing that Ismail Haniyeh said. Um, Malik Houthi also made a speech. Ansarullah commander Syed Abdul Malik Badr ad-Din al-Houthi. Um, he said he counted the number of operations 40 with 211 missiles. He's described the fourth phase of escalation, targeting all ships of all companies transporting goods to the Israeli enemy towards any port. Um, Countries and companies with a positive stance stop transporting through this route. It's in the interest of all companies, he said, to stop transporting to the Israeli enemy. The continuation of the Israeli aggression necessitates further escalation on all fronts. He reminds people that he's trained 300, they've got 300,000 soldiers trained, and they are planning to try to get there somehow. So that could be the fifth or sixth phase. Remember, Yahya Sari, who also does, he's also a spokesperson for the Ansar Allah, and he said the fifth and sixth phases are going to be beyond what anybody can imagine. Okay, just let me find Ismail Haniyeh. Sorry, I have to scroll on another device because I was looking for it on my computer and my computer kept freezing. So here we are with this substandard discussion of Ismail Haniyeh's speech, which I hopefully will find. If I can't find it here, I'll find it somewhere else. By the way, the West Bank also very much lots very active. Tulkarm and Tubas in particular have been extremely active on on the West Bank. So if I cannot find it here, I will find it somewhere else. Okay, so Ismail Haniyeh, he says he says the anniversary of the Nakba, of the 76th anniversary of the Nakba, the actual ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which I will do a lecture on at some future sit rep coming up. I'm reading Ilan Pape's book. I'll read a few other things and come back to you with a 1948 war, I guess, update. Not an update, but a 1948 war lecture, let's call it. He says they intended for the Nakba to destroy the Palestinian people, yet the Palestinian cause remains strong. I think that's true. Our people have thwarted all conspiracies and foiled malicious plots. The people of Al-Quds, Jerusalem, have stood firm around Al-Quds, resisting for 76 years. Our people in refugee camps and diaspora hold firmly to their right of return, passing down the key and the deed of the house through the generations. In Gaza, the great flood has erupted, the blessed Al-Aqsa flood. This is a bright picture of our people and their blessed flood. So he's talking about the operation of October 7th and the war. He says the resistance factions, the victorious brigades, Al-Qassam, Sarai al-Quds, and all the resistance factions have not ceased, causing losses for the 8th consecutive month. He goes over the whole fiasco with the ceasefire. He says, we announced our acceptance of the proposal presented to us by our brothers in Egypt and Qatar, which was known to and followed by the American administration. The occupation of Rafa put the negotiations at a dead end. The movement will continue its efforts to stop this brutal aggression by all possible means. Any effort or ceasefire must ensure a permanent ceasefire, complete withdrawal from the entire Gaza Strip, and a genuine prisoner exchange deal, the return of the displaced, reconstruction, and lifting the blockade. So actually, this is a more explicit set of demands than we've seen. And if you analyze negotiations, this is basically like the old offers expired and the price has gone up, because the demands used to be permanent ceasefire, complete withdrawal, reconstruction, and a prisoner exchange. And now we have lifting the blockade, which is an explicit demand now. And I've always felt that the structure of deals previously to this announcement seemed to allow the blockade in place. And now the he's saying any agreement must include lifting the blockade. So they're actually either, what, I don't know if you see this as raising their demands or making them more explicit, because that old agreement failed. So there's no if the old agreement failed, now we're going to they're saying they're going to be more explicit about what they want, and they're not going to settle for less. So the recent American statements confirm the American bias towards the enemy, providing it with political cover and military support for the war of extermination against our people. He says we're in contact with our brothers in Egypt regarding the enemy's actions at Rafah, particularly the reoccupation of the Rafah crossing. We agree on the necessity for the Israelis to withdraw from the crossing immediately. The enemy has no right to interfere how the crossing is managed. It's a Palestinian internal matter, and we'll manage it according to the established protocols. So Egypt has said that explicitly. Apparently, Israel has offered Egypt some new system where Israel and Egypt co-manage the crossing, and Egypt has said no. There's also some reports, I've seen two different reports, including video, but it's like kind of grainy video of trucks moving. I can't like verify what's going on, but they said that there was a communication from a tribal group in the Sinai who said, we are opening an alternative crossing into Gaza and we're sending aid. And there was a video of nighttime trucks going in. So there's at the very least buzz coming from Egypt about, like, if you're going to keep Rafah crossing closed, we're going to open another crossing, and you can't do anything about it. And it is, and there was also an Israeli report that Egypt is preparing for war, which of course Egypt would be absolutely foolish. I'm not saying they're not, but Egypt would be foolish not to be preparing for war, given what Israel is doing in Rafah right now. So this is the next. Ismail Haniyeh says the management of Gaza after the war will be decided by the movement in cooperation with the national consensus based on the supreme interests of our people in Gaza and facilitating all post-war matters according to the national vision that ensures the unity of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So again, more ambition. This is a speech that is expressing more ambition than we've seen in the negotiations and deals. Um, what else does he say? He calls for uniting with Gaza. The free Palestinian people must rise up everywhere and escalate the confrontation to stop this aggression and achieve the project of liberation and return. Lots on the prisoners. We salute our lions behind the bars of captivity, secret detention centers. We've prepared a file on the assaults on prisoners and have begun to deliver it to international, regional, and human rights institutions. I say to our brave prisoners, with hardship comes ease, and the dawn of freedom is coming. Uh, and he praises Turkey's decision to halt trade with Israel and join the ICJ. He appreciates positions of Egypt and Libya joining the lawsuit. He salutes the student movement all over the world. It is Gaza, he says, that's become the icon for the youth of the world in all movements. It is Gaza that's toppled the Zionist narrative, revealing the true and bloodthirsty nature of this occupier. And he says the same thing as Nasrallah said. He said, imagine Netanyahu stood on the UN platform before the Al-Aqsa flood, raising the map of Palestine as if it were the map of Israel, claiming there is no Palestine or Palestinian state. After the flood, the representative of the entity stood on the same UN platform, raising the picture of our beloved fighter and brother Abu Ibrahim Yahya Sinwar. These are the major changes created by our people in Gaza. So that's an incredible speech by Ismail Haniyeh, a very interesting and very, very telling speech by Ismail Haniyeh, the head of the Politburo of Hamas. Okay, I have 10 minutes before Tarek gets here. So I'm gonna make some quick notes on the occupation strategy. Okay. And the particular thing I wanted to talk about was how Israel's self-contradictory strategy is leading to the impossibility of success. So what do I mean? I've talked on Twitter before about European concepts of war dividing into Clausewitzian and colonial. So the idea of a Clausewitzian war is like Europe. Von Clausewitz wrote that war is policy by other means. He imagined his paradigm was Frederick the Great and Napoleon and these European commanders that fought wars with other European powers. Napoleon also fought colonial war against Haiti and lost, but that's we'll leave that aside for now. They fought, they tried to compel their enemies to surrender and grant them whatever it was they were trying to accomplish, some territorial gain or some political gain. So the idea is that war is how you compel your enemy to do your bidding in the Clausewitzian concept. In the colonial concept, you're still trying to compel the enemy to do your bidding, but you're also trying to destroy the organized social institutions of your colonial enemy to better occupy them. So a colonial insurgency war or a counterinsurgency involves controlling the population. So you occupy the population centers, you kill elites, you assassinate elites, you make demonstration massacres, you kill groups of people in very scary ways, you create a presence of occupying troops. You sometimes do these punitive expeditions. You go and you punish them for rising up or threatening to rise up. You create prisons and you install elites to replace the elites that you put in. So you install friendly elites and you support them to stay in power. So that kind of insurgency is, or otherwise known as indirect rule. The British practiced it all over South Asia, all over Africa. It was the Americans do it. They tried to do it in Iraq. They tried to do it in Afghanistan. It's very much an established way of doing things for hundreds of years. There is also a third Western way of warfare, which I haven't talked about as much on Twitter, but I talked about it today, which is the genocidal model. And again, I have referred to this book, The First Way of War, by I don't remember the first name of the author, but its last name is Grenier, Grenier. And Western genocidal war is the Americas, the United States, the English colonists in the United States are the paradigmatic, quintessential example of genocidal war. And what you do in a genocidal war is you destroy the food sources, you destroy the stored food, you destroy the farmers' fields, you kill everybody if you can. You kill all the people capable of doing work. You kill children. You are trying. The objective is to destroy the whole society, not just to rule over a terrorized, broken society, but to actually destroy the organized society altogether and potentially kill everybody, mainly by rendering their ability to access land and food impossible. So that's how they destroyed. That's the idea of a lot of the U.S. in so-called Indian wars. That's the expansion of the U.S. frontier, and then modeled on that, the Germans probably took it to an even more scientific level in the Herero and Nama genocides of I think 1905. 1905 on, a couple of years of genocides in what's now Namibia. And then the Germans, of course, went on to follow that up in Eastern Europe, committing similar genocides. But that's always the idea. It's a hunger plan. You destroy the food sources, you destroy the ability to feed themselves, water, and you kill as many people as you can, and then you try to drive. So the Germans drove the Nama into the desert, and they kind of anybody who tried to leave the desert and come back to where they were driven from, they would mow them down with machine guns, kind of hunt them down. So that was the idea with Gaza. The idea with Gaza was to surround Gaza, to render it unlivable, to destroy their farmers' fields, to destroy their food sources, and then ultimately to control the amount of aid that gets in, and then render Gaza unlivable over the long term so that the people would die. And that's that's kind of a long-term genocide plan. And there was analysis that said Gaza would be unlivable by around now. So the problem is that the Palestinians kept being able to render the unlivable Gaza livable. They have a lot of ingenuity. They have a critical mass of people. They had a couple million people there, and they were able to keep making it livable. And that infuriated the Israelis so much that eventually, and then the other thing is the barriers around Gaza, the envelope around Gaza, the fence around Gaza was breached and destroyed on October 7th. And it turns out that it's actually much more costly for Israel to try to pen Palestinians in there because they can break out and they can kill the people that are trying to prevent them from leaving. So Israel has now entered into Gaza and they're trying to break Gaza up into units that are unlivable. And that way that's the paradigm for the genocide, right? You cut aid from the north, you cut aid from the south, you cut off the north from the south, you prevent the trucks from getting in, and you starve them and you bomb them, and you try to prevent them from. You try to create unlivable enclaves. The whole strip is livable. Maybe if you can break it into parts, you can make those parts unlivable, and then the people will die in those parts. That's the genocide plan that Israel is enacting. Problem with that is to create those enclaves, you have to ring them with troops, and those troops come under constant fire from the resistance. The resistance has built a system that is very resilient to this very strategy. So here they are at an impasse because their genocidal strategy of ringing unlivable areas and then rendering them more and more unlivable requires personnel to actually enforce that unlivability, and those personnel are able to be reached and killed by the resistance, regardless of whether they're in armor or in fortified buildings or in camps or groups of troops. And the only alternative to that would be, as John Elmer likes to say, one foot over the other to go into the tunnels and try to take them out in the tunnels. The problem with that strategy is that the tunnels can be sealed, they can be blown up, and fighting in a narrow tunnel, you can only get a few men in at a time. So no matter how many men you bring, only a few at a time can go in, and those men can be shot down and killed. So what's happening now is you have this massive over mobilization by the Israelis. They've mobilized apparently 500,000 troops, but those troops have nothing to do. If they go into the tunnels, they'll be picked off slowly. If they go and try to form these rings, as they try to form these rings of fire to try to create unlivable enclaves, those rings of troops, those rings have to be defended by men with guns, to quote some movie about the occupation of Cuba by Americans. Those rings have to be defended by men with guns, and those men with guns are then coming under constant attack by the resistance. And that has been the strategic impasse that Israel has reached. They have vast numbers of men and vast amounts of equipment, but when they deploy it, all it does is become a series of targets for the resistance. And those targets have been hit with an intensity like we haven't even seen yet over the past couple of days. And that's mainly because they've gone in a big force where they had withdrawn before. Whenever they go in, whenever the resistance has access to them, they are able to make many attacks and cause attrition. Now, attrition of a force of 500,000 men takes a long time, but there is nothing the Israelis are doing besides sending more men in to get this death by 1,000 cuts. So I just wanted to describe that strategic impasse to you. And I wanted to kind of put that out there. I'll probably write it up as well in a Substack, possibly, just to give you that, just to give that kind of written concept where we have these different modes of warfare, all of which now the resistance has found an answer to. The um the mobilization of Israelis and the way they talk to the world, the way the Americans talk, is as if they're going to do a counterinsurgency. They've sent, having 500,000 men in the Gaza Strip, that would be a great counterinsurgency, right? You could control the population with that ratio of troops to civilians. The thing is, the Israelis have already destroyed all the infrastructure in the Gaza Strip, so they're standing around in the rubble. They can't corral the population. They can't cordon and search people. They go and shoot everybody that they see, and everybody in Gaza knows it. So there's no controlling them. There's no controlling them through fear if you're trying to kill them and everybody knows you're trying to kill them. So that's where that's by they've mobilized as if they're doing a counterinsurgency war, and they're deploying as if they're trying to do a war of extermination. And by doing a war of extermination, they've virtually guaranteed an implacable resistance. And so they're in this war of attrition that they don't seem to be able to, they don't have a solution for. And it's hard to imagine them having a solution for it. And we haven't even addressed all of the allies of the Palestinians, the military allies of the Palestinians that are also stepping up pressure. So the military situation is, I would say, summarized strategically that way. And that's why it's a very complex and dynamic situation. And it's balanced against, I'd say, the humanitarian disaster that will be described in my video with Tarek that I'll also be posting tonight.